Africa Business News, proudly sponsored by EY.
Coming up on Africa Business News today, one of the year's biggest failures, African Bank now plans to relist. The latest on the Ebola outbreak from West Africa, and in East Africa, Kenya's growth forecast revised down. Stay tuned. Africa, it is huge, it is diverse, and its business landscape fascinating and dynamic. And that's our business here on your favorite weekly African business stop. We're joined by Beatrice Gachenge in Nairobi and Esther Ugbodaga in Lagos. My name is Kgomoeswana, and this is the Africa Business News. Mambo Beatrice, we all understand the significance of Kenya as the hub of East African community, but tell us more about the connection between Kenya and Ethiopia, which is not a member of the EAC, but an important link in the region nonetheless. I remember driving up that road with difficulty when it was under construction about 3 years ago, and now you tell me it has been open to traffic.
Well, Victor, the road connecting Ethiopia and Kenya is called Yabelo Mega. And yes, Victor, it is now open for traffic. Now, Ethiopia's transport minister said the road is one of the several projects that is underway, and it's aimed at linking Ethiopia with its neighboring countries, and construction lasted over 3 years and it costed $37 million. Now, the project was constructed by a Chinese company, and I can assure you Kenyans are really eager for this. They've been trying to get it to Ethiopia, 90 million population, so it's quite welcomed.
Beatrice, let's not also forget that the Nairobi Stock Exchange is the newest listing in Nairobi. Now, how is that share performing, and is it your newfound favorite stock?
Well, it looks to be a favorite stock for most local investors. And just to give you a synopsis of that, on the first day of trading within the first hour, we actually saw that stock appreciating 88% in just the first hour. Though it retracted that particular day to close at 16 shillings, it was still nonetheless nearly double the IPO price, which was 9 shillings and 50 cents. And it's continued to gain in the last 5 sessions, and we saw it yesterday gaining another 8% to close at slightly over 23 shillings. So you can see the appetite that local investors have on that particular stock. While moving away from the stock market, Kenya has revised down its 2014 economic growth forecast to 5% from the earlier projection of 5.8%. Now, this is on the back of poor tourism performance.
Now, Beatrice, the only 2 countries I know that have switched from analog to digital in Africa are East African countries, Tanzania and Rwanda. You're telling me there's another one in East Africa that's switching over?
Well, that's right, Victor. Another East African country is set to switch off analog television signals, and this is Uganda. It will be launching the digital migration project in October as the deadline looms.
What do you think that will mean, Beatrice? Does it mean could we have another blackout where people without the set-top boxes are unable to receive their television signal?
Well, I guess that's the big concern that most citizens would have, as it has been the case also in Rwanda, whereby the citizens have not yet purchased a set of boxes which are required to convert the analog signals into the digital signals. So we are likely to have millions of television sets that are just blank. So it raises the question whether the citizens are prepared for the switch off. And it will be interesting to see whether by the October face-off, which is happening in the Greater Kampala, what will be the impact of that. And of course, the December deadline, what it will mean for millions of television sets that might be left blank.
Beatrice, I see the World Bank is busy again in East Africa.
That's right, Victor. The International Finance Corporation, which of course is a private lending arm of the World Bank, it invested about $22 billion in the year ended June, and of course with Sub-Saharan Africa accounting for about 4.6 billion shillings. Well, not much compared to how much they actually spent, but nonetheless in Kenya we saw, for instance, the IFC spending about $210 million in the country, and of course this was under the period under review, and was accounting for about 40% of the total investments that were made in the East African region. Now, Kenyan banks were actually the top recipients of the IFC loans, and they were accounting for about 58% of the total investments that were made by the Kenyan with regards to global financing.
The other story, MPs have yet to rule on whether or not Equity Bank will be able to roll out its mobile virtual network operator services in Kenya as planned, but at least the introduction of the East African Customs Union Protocol is already yielding good returns, Beatrice.
I believe so, Victor. Well, it is reported that the custom union's protocol has had a positive impact on intra-East Africa trade. Now, just looking at the numbers, trade grew from $2 billion in 2005, and you're looking at 5.5 billion shillings in 2013. Now, that's an increase of about 36%.
Thank you, Beatrice Gachenge, out of Nairobi, Kenya. We check into Southern Africa, where Namibia will soon have a photovoltaic power plant to supply 1% of its national consumption out in Omaruru, as the cleaner energy claims more of the center stage in Africa. Mining and manufacturing output plunges in South Africa, not unexpectedly, of course, after the string of the strike actions that we have seen. Also of interest is this decision by the government of South Africa to back the plans by its electricity utility Eskom to raise debt. The International Monetary Fund is sending a team to Zimbabwe to review the country's economic progress this week. We move on to the failed African Bank Investments Limited, or Ebola. The organization plans to relist on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in February 2015. There are also plans to expand into secured lending and insurance, according to curator Tom Venterboer. Namibians are still probably looking for the 78-carat diamond that's missing. It disappeared during the Namdeb strike recently, but there's a bigger find in the region. A 232-carat diamond was discovered in the Cullinan mine in South Africa. This value is estimated to be between 10 to 15 million US dollars. And in Zambia, Lubambe Copper Mine has reported that it has increased its annual production by more than 8,000 tons in this year to June 30th. One of the shareholders, African Rainbow Minerals, said in the annual results that Lubambe has registered a 60% increase in the production figures. African Rainbow Minerals executive chairperson Beatrice said the mine aims to reach a production target of 45,000 tons of finished copper by 2016. Time to move over to West Africa and hear what Esther Ugbodaga has to tell us about her part of the world. Esther, Ebola continues to wreak havoc on the progress of the West African economies, especially Sierra Leone, Guinea and Liberia. What is the impact on Nigeria right now?
Well, Nigeria has cut its growth forecast by 0.5% for the 2014 fiscal year. Now, this is due to the adverse effects of the Ebola virus and terrorist attacks in the northeastern part of the country. Now, according to the country's finance minister and coordinating minister for the economy, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, what she says that Nigeria is still projected to grow around 6.5% for the year. Well, she also says that the government will continue to monitor the situation to determine if it will have further impact on the economy, and that the federal government has actually instituted a team led by the chief economic advisor to continue monitoring the impact of the virus in the country. However, well, she doesn't think that these two factors will have further significant impact, particularly because the Nigerian economy is largely driven by local consumption.
5%, 0.5% of Nigeria is a big deal. Of course, the global economy is just as concerned. We saw that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation added about $50 million to the fight against the disease, even as President Obama comes under increasing pressure to do more. But ArcelorMittal, a major investor in Liberia's iron ore, is pumping millions of dollars in capital equipment to improve its logistical efficiency of the operations there.
Well, absolutely right, Victor. ArcelorMittal Iron Ore has imported a ship loader valued at $30 million US dollars. Now, this is to boost its operations in Liberia. Now, this is despite the outbreak of the Ebola virus that has almost brought the country's economy to a standstill. Now, the ship loader will be stationed at the port of Buchanan to speed up the loading of vessels docking in from the iron ore at the port.
And Guinea once had the largest mergers and acquisitions transaction in Africa, Esther, when Vale of Brazil invested there in 2009-2010. But it is now making headlines for rescinding mineral rights of a major diversified group, which is suing the country for the reversal of the decision made in April this year. But Esther, let's stay positive news. Nigeria is set to double its trade volume with Asia.
Well, that's absolutely correct, Victor. Now, Nigeria has concluded elaborate plans to boost trade between it and Asian countries by 100% in the next 24 months. Now, this new trade strategy was fine-tuned recently in India by officials of the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, along with its parastatals. Now, the meeting in Delhi was the first of its kind in 50 years and was aimed at doubling volume of trade between Nigeria and Asian countries to over $80 billion within 2 years.
Another thing that captured my attention, Esther, is how 13 mobile telecommunications companies have been declared extinct by the Nigerian Communications Commission after they were found to be incapable of delivering any quality service to subscribers. That leaves the country's 120 million subscribers or so split among only 4 cellular providers. Can you tell us which these 4 are?
Well, the current 4 giants are MTN, Airtel, Globalcom, and Etisalat. Now, for those 13 telcos that lost their licenses, they've basically gone extinct. They've lost all their customers to the competition, and of course the NCC feels that there's really no need or any point for them to remain in business. So yes, they've been scrapped from the competition space, and we have just those 4 giants with a huge market. So it's going to be interesting to see how 4 of them compete in this large market of consumers.
And now I'm going to put my team on the spot here, Beatrice and Esther. If I were to say to you, I want to invest in your top share, top stock in your region, which one would it be and why? Beatrice, you go first.
All right, well, thinking of the banking stock, which is one of the darling stocks and one of the sectors that we've seen a lot of growth, and of course the potential is enormous when you're looking at the growth portfolio and you're looking at the loan book. I would probably go for Equity Bank, which of course there are many growth prospects there. If you look at the mobile virtual network operation services, of course it's still having some issues here and there. Nonetheless, once they get that on board, I think it's really going to put them up on a new level. And of course we have KCB, it's another good stock that probably a lot of investors are also looking at.
KCB, you would go with Equity Bank before you go with KCB. How about Esther Ugbodaga in West Africa? Which one is your choice?
Well, Victor, I think I'm going to go with Beatrice on this one. I'm sticking with bank stocks. Well, here on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, they're very liquid, they're predictable, and they continue to enjoy a lot of support from the financial regulator. That's the Central Bank of Nigeria. I'll pick Guaranty Trust Bank, First Bank of Nigeria Holdings, and Stanbic IBTC.
Well, there you have it. Esther and Beatrice love their banks, but it's not surprising financial services sector is the major driver of Africa's resurgence. And as we wrap up this week's show, I asked the Africa Business News team the trivia question of the week. Esther and Beatrice, September 16th is a public holiday in which oil-rich African country? The bad news for you is there are 3 oil-rich countries that celebrate some important day this week. But who's going to take a shot at this one?
Victor, I think I'll take a shot at this. I think it might be Libya.
It's spot on. It's celebrated this September 16th in the Mediterranean oil economy of Africa in memory of those who died or those who were exiled while the country was still under Italian rule. That before gaining independence under King Idris al-Sanusi in 1951. We also wish Angola a happy Heroes Day on September 17th and Ghana a joyous Founders Day on September 21st. Founders Day, of course, is the birthday of the founding father of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, the country that used to be known as the Gold Coast. And that brings an end to our show this week. Beatrice Gachenge out of Nairobi and Esther Ugbodaga out of Lagos. Thank you very much. Stay tuned to CNBC Africa. We are back with you next week with more Africa business news. And as Esther tells me out of Lagos, I should say until next week, Kgomoeswana.